much for joining in from literally all over the place, and thank you for your time. We're going to be talking about 6 ways to build the church financially in tough times. And so I just want to let you know that this webinar is for small to mid-sized churches under 400 in average attendance. I would say if you're above that, then you most likely know this information, or you're doing everything possible beyond what I'm about to say. But also, like Sandy said, my name is Gary Moritz. I'm the Director of Church Revitalization for the BCNE, and I get to have the opportunity to be part of a larger team at the BCNE, our church growth team, where together we help churches get to a place of health and flourish. And it gives me great joy to offer this webinar as a guide to help you in your church. My desire is to help churches move from flatline to lifeline and to flourish during a time of crisis. And so, like Sandy said, I have some of my team to answer any questions on the chat. So if you think of a question and you want to throw it up there, they will be able to respond as I can continue to move forward in the talk today. And so I know your time is limited, and I've asked God to help me help others in this 1 hour moment together. So we're seeing so many webinars right now going on, and most of them all lead to some type of product or purchase. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not here to sell you anything. I promise that. However, I'm here to offer you hope and maybe a place to start. So I'm so glad that you've joined us today. And so as we've been going through this crisis, what we've been finding is we've seen churches move through basically 4 different types of levels. We're seeing them move from stabilize to normalize to mobilize and then to revitalize, which many churches are not quite there yet. And so there's never been a time like this. I mean, everything is stripped away at this point, and the only thing that matters right now is the relationships that we have to focus on. And this is the greatest time in history to shepherd relationships and be generous towards our community and the church. I mean, this is a great time to start finding the needs and to find new ways to meet those needs. And right now you might be feeling disorientated or not really knowing, what to do. And so this gathering it's not really about the gathering on the weekend, but it's the gathering during the week, and to focus on these relationships and to go from house to house. And so you're saying this, well, because we're talking about finances, and I've learned a long time ago, when you talk about money, people get funny. When you talk about money, people get funny, and that money is either a tool or an idol. And pastors are either praying for money as a tool to be used for kingdom ministry, or some of them might be desiring just for selfish reasons, which can lead to idolatry. And so right now is where in this time, and we're going to be talking about how to handle some of these crises that we may be facing. I just want to encourage you that banks and landlords right now are being very forgiving, and they'll forgive as long as you're communicating with them. And so we'll talk more about that in just a moment. So we'll be able to take questions. If you have any questions, just go on and put those up in the chat box. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm not claiming to have all the answers. I do want to offer some helps. And so with that, we'll dive right in. So in the introduction, if you were to pick a word, I would use the word prepare. And the word prepare, it's because everyone is feeling something right now. And the bottom line, when you talk about ministry and you talk about money, you're really talking about a budget. And budget is all about the in and out. It's about what comes in and what goes out. And so we need to be prepared to take a hard look at income and expenses, especially during this time. And I love our New England pastors. I mean, we are so tight up here, like to help one another, to equip one another. And we have a very strong network here, especially within the BCNE. And so I would just want to share a little bit about maybe what some of the experts are saying right now. What can we expect financially? I mean, these are just projections. And I love what my good friend Tim Owen said up at Mission City Church in Vermont. He literally said, there are no experts in the unknown. There are no experts in the unknown. And there's no doubt that we're walking in the unknown right now. But this is what I do know, that we can expect at least a 50% decline in giving while we're not meeting on campus. If you do not have digital giving set up and you're just used to going from week to week, you can expect up to a 50% decline in giving if we're not meeting on campus. You can also expect a 20% decrease in giving when we go back into our buildings. I mean, it is so important for us to realize there's going to be a day where we actually go back into our buildings, and it's going to take some time to rebuild that momentum again. You can also expect to see the decrease in giving, and it's probably going to continue to 2021. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, this is going to be really a time to rebuild and realign. And so if the situation in our world gets worse, then we're going to be solely meeting online, maybe up to 16 weeks or more. These figures, they could change. And so if they're going to change, then really what we can look at is maybe a 75% decrease while we're online, or maybe a 50% reduction in income moving ahead and forward before we get back to normal. Now, you're saying, where in the world did you get these figures from? Well, I got these figures from my good friends at Church Answers. I mean, we've talked through these figures and these budgets and these percentages, and really this is the projections that's happening. And so here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that we do not know what will happen after this, but here's the thing: we can prepare. We can prepare for things to be different and be prepared to continue to reach and help people in our communities where we eat, work, shop, and play. So the question is, are we prepared? Listen, are we prepared for the best expected and worst case scenarios? That's the question we need to answer. Are we prepared for the best case, expected case, and worst case scenarios? Now, here, this is what I do know. That change right now is accepted all over the United States. I mean, if you thought you couldn't change anything in your church, now's the time to change. Now's the time to change your thinking. Now's the time to change your focus, your mission, your vision, all the programs that might have been driving you crazy that you're trying to get rid of. You can change those. The focus is really on what matters most, and that is people. I mean, we are seeing right now the biggest shift forward literally in 120 years. And this is not about individualistic departments, but rather it's about family units and homes and relationships that matter. So I say all that to get us prepared to what's possibly about to come. So number two, I want us to focus on increased digital giving. To increase digital giving, I mean, we have to evaluate this very thing. We have to evaluate what percentage of our giving is coming in digitally. This percentage, listen, determines our actions. This is the number you need to know. This is the number you need to know. You need to know your percentages on digital giving, on the envelopes coming in, and on your campus meetups. You have to know these numbers. A pastor who does not know these numbers, they're going to be in trouble. So here's what I want to share with you. If you're at zero, you need to act now. You need to act now. You need to start by setting up multiple ways for people to give, multiple entry points for people to give. I mean, you could set up and utilize giving platforms like SecureGive, Tithely, PushPay. I mean, I don't endorse any one of these providers. I'm just giving you some options. They're out there. I mean, online giving through your website, that's definitely a must. I mean, if you have a website, which I hope you do, you need to at least have a link there that says click to give. So you have to have online giving through your website. Another thing is have online giving through your AP or through your app, right? Your APP, the big APP, the app. We're all about downloading apps. You've got to have maybe a method or a way to download. And then what's really cool is a lot of these giving platforms, they have a free app usually. When you join in, they give you an app, you put it on your phone, and you can give directly online. I mean, they also, some of them provide text to give. Through the provider that you're going with, and where you can actually text the amount in and it goes directly into your church bank account. There's also things that you might have heard of called ACH. This is automated money transfer. I mean, if someone has a bank account, your members can set this up through their banks. It's very, very easy. And these are just some financial ways that you can help maybe shift the thinking. Another thing is to just encourage people to pay their donations through bill pay. That's already accessible in their online banking if they're using online banking. I mean, bill pay, that's been around a long time. You can foster maybe that conversation with some of your folks. And then when you get back on campus, of course, you know, you have the tablets and the kiosk and all that stuff. If you're willing to touch that, I think we'll be past that point when we get on campus. But here's the thing. If you are below 60%, you have to start encouraging and educating your people on the benefits and ease of digital giving. You've got to start moving people in this direction. This is going to take perseverance. It's going to take persistence. over, a time of a long haul, because you're going to have these conversations, and you're going to have the immediate impression upon them that there's an urgency at the moment to capture these first online gifts and to capture the gifts that people are giving. And so if you're around the 60% digital giving, honestly, you're not doing that bad. But if you are at 60%, you want to probably look at 80% for your new goal, because this ensures that if another situation happens where you cannot meet on campus, this means when you can't, your budget or your spending or your ministry initiatives, they're not going to suffer. And we know in New England, I mean, you've heard it time and time again. If you don't like the weather, just wait, it will change. And so, this includes blizzards and snowstorms when you have to shut down for inclement weather and stuff like that. And so it's important to at least have this pathway to be able to give online. And there are much more likely to be reasons to shut down for the church in the future. And so we have to prepare for the unexpected. Now, what about those who write checks and still want to write checks? Checks are still great, right? So you want to encourage them to continue giving. Another great thing you can do is send them a letter thanking them for their gifts, and then sharing with them that your team is still working. You guys are still seeing life change, and I hope your church is. You send people self-addressed stamped envelopes with mailing envelopes for their gifts so that they can mail back a check and continue to support the church they love. I mean, tell them that you can even post-date the check so that you can go on and cash it at a later date. I mean, you have to just show them the fact that there's an option for them. Now, if you don't have a giving envelope, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer this as a download for you. I'm going to actually show you a copy of our envelope. And so I've always said time and time again that you could not put big cash in small envelopes. And so I remember a long time ago when I was being challenged with this, we used to have these little tiny envelopes, and, quite frankly, I couldn't put a lot of cash in them. It wouldn't hold it. But my heart, I wanted to give to my church. But, you have to have a larger giving envelope that has clear instructions on how to give. And we're going to be giving you that for free. You don't have to pay for it. We're just going to give you a copy personally of our church envelope, and you can go. And I'm also going to give you the printer and the people that we work with in North Carolina. They're absolutely incredible. And so please make sure that you're looking at the dates when your team is making deposits. So if you ask people to post date a check, make sure that your team is looking at those dates on the check and not submit it into the bank and then have a check bounce. That's not good. So in the future, here's something you can do right now. You can create a self-addressed, postage paid mailing giving envelope for people to use in the future. Here it is. Most people are not going to throw it out if you have personally put a stamp on it and your church address is on it. Now, they're going to view it as a waste if they decide to throw it out. Most people are just going to put something in it and they're going to send it in. I mean, that's something you can do right off the bat. So if you don't have a really nice giving envelope, you can just take a regular white envelope, put a stamp on it, put the church address on it, and send them 5 or 6 of them to get them through the month. I mean, think about it. You can actually help them continue giving to your church. And so you want to gently encourage and teach them how to transition to give online. And so you have to include with this a letter of the different ways they can give digitally. So maybe you only have 1 or 2 ways. That's fine. Put that in the letter. But I want to challenge you to increase that and grow in this area. A key to increasing donations is you have to really provide multiple and easy ways for people to give to your ministry. I mean, if you're just waiting for the weekend, the weekend's not going to happen anytime soon, at least for a couple more weeks. And so you have to offer many different avenues and pathways for people to give to the church that they love. And so you want to encourage people to kind of realign their thinking. Another thing you can do, I've already experienced this. There were families that were trying to go away on vacation. Those vacations have been stopped. Those tremendous amount of spending going to Disneyland and all those things, it's kind of stopped. So here's maybe an idea. Maybe encourage your people to realign their vacation funds. So that maybe they're not giving it to the mouse, right, or the dolphin in Florida, but maybe they're giving it to your church. And so maybe they're unable to use this money they put away now. And maybe during the pandemic, they can use the money to now support the church's efforts to reach their community and help people in need during this time. And I know this, the greatest churches are the churches that always believe in sacrifice over self. And so desperate measures require desperate ask. And so you're going to have to possibly get on the phone. And I believe with all my heart, you have not because you ask not, just like the book of James says. And the book of James says, don't ask amiss, ask for kingdom targeted things and make sure your motive is right. And so have those conversations with people. I think it's so important. Another idea is just reach out to your extravagant givers. Now, this is controversial because some pastors believe they shouldn't know what people give, or maybe don't even know the tiers that people give in. And so in any type of leadership position, you have to know who the people are who are giving to your church. I mean, especially the people who are all in and they're giving to your church. I mean, you need to know these things. I mean, you don't want to be a bad manager or a bad steward by putting somebody in a high-powered leadership position and they're not giving a dime to your organization. I mean, that's not good management. And so if people who are all in, they're bought all in, and again, I know this is controversial, but to have a conversation with your extravagant givers, and this should be done personally. I mean, this shouldn't be done for any self-gain. This is really a face-to-face or virtual conversation if you need to. And you do this as humbly as you know how to have a conversation, because honestly, if they're giving a lot of money to your church, they care about your church, and the decisions that are you guys not meeting and we're not meeting and stuff like that, it affects them. And so you want to just be a good manager of that conversation with them and let them know what's happening right now. Let them know, put their ear to the ground so they understand that their money is going to good places, and you want to have high communication. And they may have to take care of family members that have lost their jobs. Look, I get all that. But here's the thing. Ask them to stand in the gap with you during the season. Just go for the ask. If they say, no, I can't do it right now, that's fine. But know that you did ask them. Number 3, share stories. Share stories. So it's so important right now for you to share stories on how your ministry is reaching people online. Many people are giving, to the building and the budgets and some people say butts, but here's the thing, we're online now, and we're online for a season. And so it's important for you to share stories on how your ministry is reaching people online, how you're reaching people across the globe, and let your congregation know what you are doing to reach and serve the community. That way, they know that the church still needs to be funded. I mean, let's face it, the church, it exists, right? It exists to be the hands and feet of Jesus. It doesn't exist to have programs. And so now we've kind of been kicked out of our building, and we have now been mobilized to reach a community that we desperately want to reach. And so share these stories of how your people are reaching people and how your church is reaching people across the globe. I mean, people are more likely to give to Life Change than to buildings and bills. I mean, I don't know anybody that's ever gotten excited saying, hey, Pastor, we're so excited we get to pay the light bill. I mean, most people get excited when you're building wells in Guatemala, when you're feeding the poor and you're taking care of families in need and you're changing your community. That's what people get excited about. And so you have to communicate regularly with your congregation. You have to let them know how they can stay connected, even though you aren't physically meeting. Because here's the thing, we're physically distant, but we're digitally connected. And so you and I have to learn how to leverage that, especially during this time. And we have to be high in our communication area as we talk about giving with our people. The next thing is you have to just ask people to share their stories about Life Change online, as well as on their phones. I mean, most people have a smartphone. What would it look like if you were just to say, hey, can you do me a favor? Tell that story in your phone and post it on Facebook and tag the church. I mean, this is what I know. People give to vision of lives changing, not division and dividing. And so people love to see life-changing stories. People love to see God's money doing God's work in God's way. And so it's important for us to share those stories with people, because people desire to have something tug on their heart, knowing that they're giving to your church, that they're seeing greater things happen because of their giving. So I just want to share that with you, which leads me into number 4. Number 4, to decrease expenses. Now you're like, well, no kidding, but sadly, this isn't common sense to too many people. I mean, to meet this priority, there are some actions we need to take as we work to do more with less. Did I say that right? We want to do more with less. And so here's some of the things that we did. Maybe you did this, but I'm just going to share kind of what we did. We stopped all building improvement, upgrades, and building projects. We just stopped. We just said, okay, why would we put, all this money into a building project when we really don't know where we're headed? So we have to stop all building projects. So maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to reduce building expenses, the maintenance, the utilities. I mean, take a look. Here's some ideas. Take a look at the trash removal contracts that you have. Maybe you have a dumpster in the back and you want to maybe lower that rate right now and see the frequency, if the frequency can be reduced when they pick up. I mean, you won't see immediate change with these effects, but it will help you in the long run. Also in your church, adjust the thermostats. Unplug anything that can be unplugged. I mean, that sounds like common sense, but shockingly, even in my own church, I walk in and I see things plugged in and I'm thinking to myself, why is that plugged in right now? That is using electricity and nobody's here. So I went on an unplug kind of parade. And so you might need your own parade and go through your church and say, I need to start unplugging things. I mean, this can easily be overlooked while you're not on campus. That seems silly, but trust me, it works. Next thing you want to do is you want to freeze all ministry department spending and the initiatives for a specific period of time, listen to this, except for outreach efforts to your community. You want to make sure you're constantly on the give and you're constantly seeing life change in your community. You could put a freeze on ordering curriculum right now. You could put a freeze on, getting those programs that you wanted. Maybe your worship leader wants this new program or something or whatever it is, or new hymnals or whatever. You just need to put a freeze on all department spending, because right now that's not important. And so, but what is important is the outreach of your church, getting out in the community and seeing those dollars being invested into lives that are going to be changed. The next thing you probably want to do is postpone all events through a designated period of time and just focus on the mission critical initiatives. This is so important. Emphasize the priority of keeping commitments to your missionaries and your organizations that you're already committed to supporting. Don't start cutting the missionaries' budgets. Don't start cutting, the BCNE cooperative giving program. Don't start cutting those things. Keep giving to those things, because those are missional. Those are leading to life change. But rather postpone all those events you wanted to do, those potlucks, those picnics, those concerts, whatever you were going to do. Cancel those things, because really right now you just need to rest and continue to reach people in your community. Then you want to move as much as possible online. I mean, this includes all ministries, kids, teens, tweens, your men's groups, your women's groups, etc. I mean, there are so many free things that you could get online. Facebook Live. If you want to do something with your kids, you jump on, you pick a day and a time, and then maybe it's Wednesday at 7 after dinner, and all the parents are like, hey, we're going to watch Facebook Live, and you have a little kids program. Maybe it's a puppet ministry. I mean, you do something. Maybe your teens and your tweens, you're doing online scavenger hunts in the house. I mean, just think about ways you can reach out. Maybe it's men and women's prayer groups early in the morning. Your goal right now is to bring everything online and keep as many people connected to you as you lead as the pastor. I mean, people need to hear from their pastor. I mean, this is going to take some training, but trust me, it's doable. It's doable. And so this is the time to take a look at the critical line items in your budget and to see whether things can be reduced or eliminated. I mean, this is a great time to start cutting things and also maybe bringing some things down just for this season. And so it's important for us to understand that we need to realign ministry and expenses during this transition. So if you've purchased equipment that is necessary for going online, that's good. I mean, you want to put a hold on all the other upcoming expenses just to compensate. And so you want to look at your budget, you want to look at all monthly and yearly subscriptions. Are you really using them right now? Are they really a necessity? I mean, things like Microsoft Office, maybe Planning Center. Maybe you don't need the high package. Maybe you can drop down to a low package. Maybe not everybody on staff needs the whole 365, or maybe you can work a deal out. Vimeo. I mean, anything you can do to reduce your plans would be powerful. So look through your budget and kind of look through, okay, what are we spending money on? What are some things we can just cut back for a season, and then we can ramp back up after this is over. You want to reduce the use of professional and independent contractors for this time. You want to set a time period. You know, maybe you're paying your sound tax, or you have 1099 employees, contractors, lawn care. I don't know what you have in your church, but here's the thing. You can ask your volunteers to replace some of these expenses as a service to their church. And, you know, you want to make sure you're observing all the state and local guidelines, but this is an excuse for them to get out of their house. So, you know, maybe you're not cutting the grass right now, obviously in New England. I mean, we may get another snowstorm. I hope not, but we might. You never know. But maybe it's just a cleanup and having people just go in there and just clean up, and making sure that it's obviously just one person at a time. But, you know, again, obey your state and local guidelines. That's important. The next thing you might want to think about is just reducing any conference attendance, expenses for a long period of time, maybe even into next year. You want to think about traveling and saying, okay, how can we reduce some of those things, and look for great online webinars and conferences to attend for next year at the fraction of the price. I mean, I've been to pretty much every conference in America. And I can tell you that after I come back and I look at the price, I'm like, was that really worth that price? I mean, a lot of times you can go online or book an appointment with an author of a book, and they'll be more than happy to talk with you or do a Zoom call with them. And it's a lot cheaper. So you just want to think about these things for the long-term option for the next year, and depending on how things play out also with your finances. Another thing, pastors, you might want to look at how you're doing pastoral meetings and lunches. Obviously the social distancing thing. I know you want to get out of the house, but just consider Zoom. I mean, we know right now that Zoom calls work. Save your cash. I mean, it just works. I mean, have your own coffee at your house and just talk online. I mean, you don't need to spend that extra money. You might also want to look at reductions in payroll and staff. This is the last resort. This is not what you want to do right away, but it is the last resort. And so, you should be considering in the long term, when analyzing this, you want to think of the purpose over the people. And I know this is hard. These are hard conversations, but listen, it's got to be done. You have to look at this sooner rather than later, so that you can be prepared if it comes to this, and you have to do something harsh. So you might want to just start reducing hours or reducing somebody's pay, and you're still keeping them on, but you have to reduce hours and pay. I mean, that's going to save your organization. The goal is not to keep people employed. The goal is to protect your organization and to make sure it's going to flourish so that people can actually have a job. And so I know that's hard to hear, but honestly, that's what you have to do as the leader. And so the next thing is communicate. It's communicate. And so you want to communicate with your people that the mission, it still continues, and the needs still need to be funded. This is so important. You want to make sure that you're communicating with people, you're talking with people, you're having these conversations, and you have to communicate the need for digital giving. I mean, I mentioned before about your first letter you send out. You're going to send them some giving envelopes, but the second letter, that may need to be mailed to those that are continuing to give by check or campus or through the mail. And you want to communicate, listen to this, you want to communicate to them the necessity to move their giving to digital because of the limited time at the office and the limited times banks are available. I was kind of shocked when I thought I could still go on with my normal schedule, and we recognize the banks now change their entire hours. And so it adds an inconvenience there. So this is a conversation you can have with them about, limiting the time of the banks and all that stuff, but it's a necessity to move their giving online. The next thing you want to think about, this is so important, is that you want to communicate with your lenders, your vendors, and your staff. You want to be so transparent in this area right now with finances. You want to keep them updated on your financial situation, the plans for you moving forward. I mean, this is especially important if you have a mortgage or debt right now. You do not want to go silent during this time. Trust me, you don't want to go silent during this time. This is a time to over communicate and over communicate with your banks, with your landlords about, saying, hey, I just want to communicate where we're at right now. Is this a problem? What can we do? You want to over communicate with them, because here's the truth. This is what I've been finding right now, that banks and landlords are being very forgivable during this time if we're willing to communicate. And it's so important for us to recognize that, because if we don't communicate, then we have some issues. And so what I'm really excited about with our church growth team, if you're part of an ethnic church or you need help, we can help you. Our church growth team can help you with that. We have incredible leaders that can help you transition through this if you need help. And so that's why we want to be here for you. The next thing you might want to think about is just communicate with your staff via memo, or just be open with them about the budget changes, things that you're doing. It's so important. I love our church. I'm not here to brag about our church, but we're very transparent. We're very open about what's happening, because we want people to know what's going on. It's not a secret. We want people to know what's going on and how they can help. So it's important that you communicate with your staff and you're constantly keeping them in the loop what's going on, and that you don't have to harbor all this pressure yourself as the pastor. Next thing is you just want them to know, hey, communicate with us. This is a time to reach out if if you have questions, especially communicate with us, communicate with your church, anything like that with the BCNE. We want you to communicate with us. And if you have any questions, we're here to help. We want to help you. We have so many people on our church growth team with vast experiences that can guide you during this time. Now is the time to connect with this amazing group. We're ready. We're willing. We want to help. That's our heartbeat, to help the local churches in New England. And so, here's something else to think about. We celebrate what we cultivate. And so share with your people how many new digital givers you have seen. So every time a new person comes online and they give digitally, celebrate. Just give a shout out, send a memo, do whatever you have to do to communicate with your church that we have new givers online, and then encourage others to kind of join on and to continue to give. Another thing is, if you have a person that gives online, you want to send them a personal note. You want to send them a note, a phone call, a free digital gift. Maybe it's a $5 Amazon card or $5 Dunkin' Donuts card, whatever. Thank them for giving. Many times we fail at this as leaders. We don't thank the people that give to our organizations. It is so important that you go out of your way to thank the people that support the church and support your organization during a time of crisis. And so number 6 is we want to educate. We want to educate. That means everyone is feeling financial pressure at this time. It's not just pastors and it's not just churches. And so what we have to understand is there are so many great organizations out there. I'm not going to take too long on this, but I want you to consider, maybe when you go back running a virtual financial peace university class. What's really cool about Dave Ramsey right now is they're offering help right now that your church could possibly take advantage of. So if you go to Financial Peace University for more information, they'll be able to help you there. He's giving away a lot of free things, which is pretty cool. And so people are going to be looking for help with their personal finances during a time of crisis. And so you want to be able to at least resource them and point them in a direction where they can be provided with biblical help to help them during this time. And so it's important for us to understand, as pastors, as leaders, it's important for us to just really just kind of lean in to any free things that we can take advantage of during this time. So I just want to challenge you, just go over to Financial Peace. I don't even remember the website. They'll put it up there in the chat notes, but he's doing something he's never done before. And it's so encouraging, because I love when people give away free things for churches. And so I'm not one of those guys that like charging people for things. I mean, this is free. I'm doing this because I love the local church, and I want to encourage you. I want to help you and just encourage you with this very thing. And then lastly, number 6, we have to pray and rely on God. We have to pray and rely on God. I mean, this is so important, and this sounds so, elementary. I mean, we've got to pray. remember, God is building his church. And none of the stuff that we're going through right now has taken God by surprise. I mean, nothing. I mean, God's not shocked by anything. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's building his church. And, I'm speaking to pastors out there. I'm speaking to myself. It's Jesus's church, not our church. We're just the little manager kind of running the store, so to speak. And so we're the little shepherd. He's the chief shepherd. And so we have to trust that God knows what he's doing. And so it can be scary, but I love this quote. I've really loved this quote for years by St. Augustine. He said this, he says, pray as though everything depends on God. Pray as though everything depends on God, and work as though everything depends on you. Work as everything depends on you. So I don't want you to give up. I want you to constantly pray every single day. Pray, bring your staff together to pray over the finances and over this virus and over your church members, and just engage and let God work, because everything does depend on God. But you and I have got to work like everything depends on us. So we have to be prepared and be ready for anything that may come our way, so that we're ready for it. So what I'd like to do now, I just want to pray, close out our time, and then we're just going to open it up for any questions. So Jesus, thank you so much for this time where we can gather together. And Lord, thank you for this opportunity to just come together and just maybe find out new information we didn't know before. And God, we just thank you so much that the BCNE is just here to help the local churches, God. God, thank you for the leadership, God. Thank you for the church growth team. And Lord, we pray that this webinar would be a blessing to many. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I do want to say one last thing. If you don't know how to set up a give page, our give page at our church, you can go and copy it. If you have questions, we can connect you with some of our people that do this. It's cityunited.church/give. And you could go and just check it out the way we have it laid out. We have tutorials on there, based upon, our people and kind of, our platforms and stuff like that. But we try to make it as easy as possible, because we know that this could be a challenge for some people, especially people who tend to be older and might not be online a lot. And so just check it out. It's there for free. Copy whatever you want. Copyright. That's what copyright means. Copyright. I'm just kidding. So take whatever you want. We're here to help you in any way we can. And then I do want to make a note also, if we didn't already put it in the notes, I think we did. Liberty Press Online. We put that up, libertypressonline.com. Just let them know it's Tim and Myron Rupee, and just let them know. Say, hey, Gary said to contact you, that maybe you could help me with my giving envelope. They are great, great people. And they understand the local church so well. And they help large churches and small churches, and they always work within the budget. They're just a tremendous blessing, and they're very godly, and they do an incredible, incredible job. So just check them out. And don't forget about Dave Ramsey. So our team has been chatting with you. If you have any questions for me, you can go on and reach back out. My email's right there, gmoritz@bcne.net. And it's been a great time to hang out with you. And I just want to thank you, Sandy, for having me on this afternoon. And I just hope it was a blessing.
Yeah, Gary, so let me ask you, can I ask you a question? If you'd
Sure.
be willing to share the letters. I think a couple of people, it might be helpful, the giving letters that you send out, even the letters to encourage people, to give, move from that, not giving digitally to giving digitally. Would that be something that you might be able to share with us?
Absolutely. Our team can work on that.
Okay.
And then I guess everybody that signed up for the webinar, I guess we can just give them all the, we can just send them to you here by the end of the day, and then get those to you, and then we can get that to them. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I think that might be a good resource for people. And what I've done is I was taking copious notes. So we'll come up with a one-page resource sheet so that you can share those, and it'll have all the links that you shared, as well as some of the other, I put that quote in there, which I love, from St. Augustine myself. So anyway, we'll have that resource sheet available with this webinar. so people can
Excellent.
connect that way. We do want people to know, though, that on Thursdays at 2 o'clock, the church growth team is going to continue to do some more webinars that might be helpful to your church. Next week, we're thinking about doing, or we're not thinking, we're actually going to do a webinar about creative ways to connect with your community, so that you, you know, as Gary has already said, outreach is one of those things we shouldn't stop doing. And so we've had some churches in our regions that have really done some creative stuff. So we're going to have some pastors on who are going to talk about that. So that'll be next Thursday. And then the Thursday afterwards, we're going to be talking about how to share the gospel online. We have a pastor, Chris Gepner, in Vermont, and he does that really well. And so he's going to be on to share about those types of principles to share the gospel online. And then he's also going to kind of take a look at, you know, when we go back to church, should it look different? And I think you have probably some thoughts about that too, Gary. So, so we're going to be doing that in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to check in, we'll be sending out the links so that you can register for those webinars. And so we can't thank you enough, Gary, for today, as well as your staff who've been behind the scenes doing the chats. We appreciate that. Anybody else that might have a question out there that wants to use the chat, please feel free. We'll stay on for a few more minutes to do that. But we really thank you for that, Gary. Appreciate all your time and effort. Good stuff here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great afternoon and be blessed. All right.